first and the third speaker. Yep. For the government side. So I have 7 minutes and 30 seconds on the clock. I want to say before I start, like I may have a bit of shortness of breath this round or whatever, so just bear with me if that becomes a problem. Give me 1 second. Okay. So 7 minutes and 30 seconds on the clock before I begin. Is anybody not ready? Okay. All right, so my time is going to start now. So this house is going to be the Black Panther Party that's defined in the motion, and the framework is going to be net benefits to Black Americans. We think that the Black Panther Party, as fundamentally, a pro-Black people party, has the intrinsic goal to assist Black Americans with any issue that would arise to them. So their goals as a movement are the net benefits to Black Americans in this period of time. So the framework should be net benefits to Black Americans. We think that this is very reasonable and intuitive. Okay, our first contention is about serving the purpose of the clinic and
PNC
therefore,
pause time.
yeah,
I'm sorry, my internet just cut out. Can you just repeat the entire top of case?
absolutely, yeah. So this house is going to be the Black Panther Party, which was mentioned in the motion, and the framework is net benefits to Black Americans. And the justification here is that since the Black Panther Party is fundamentally concerned with the needs of Black Americans, that's its entire purpose of existence, we think that it's very fitting that it is operating on a framework which is concerned with the net benefits to Black Americans. Okay,
Cool. Thank you.
we're good? Okay, I'm going to resume my time right now. So, contention one about serving the purpose of the clinic and therefore the purpose of the Panthers. So, judges, as I mentioned before, the fundamental purpose of the Black Panthers is to do what's best for Black Americans. Every single action that they take should bolster this specific goal. So, when it comes to the PFMCs, their purpose was to provide free medical services, legal consulting, and political education to underprivileged Black Americans. Therefore, the Black Panther Party should inherently take the pragmatic action which directly helps the African American community. In the status quo, which is today, and probably to a higher degree post 1972, we see that donations and volunteers are often inadequate at financing vast humanitarian initiatives, especially across the scope of an entire nation. Think about how bold the PFMC idea is. We're going to have these stations as the party, these locations throughout the entirety of the United States. That is going to take an obscene amount of funding, an obscene amount of volunteers, an obscene amount of donations. And it's going to be like considerably harder to actually do effectively if we're only doing it with donations and volunteers. So realistically, if the PFMC only relies on the donations and volunteers, we as the party will just objectively be able to provide effective communities with less services because we have less funding, we have less resources. What can this look like? Well, since the PFMCs provide medical services, this could mean that we are able to provide medical services of lesser quality to affected communities. Overall, the health in these communities ends up being not as good as it could have been. We see that in op world, we actually have the continuation of the effects of privatized healthcare, as well as the fact that free healthcare will simply not be able to provide equitable results without government funding. We just don't do enough in the op world. On the legal services, we could see decreasing quality of legal advice due to an inability to access the proper resources. This perpetuates the cycle of incarceration in Black communities seen at this time and, in the status quo as well. And on the idea of political education, we see that we're just objectively able to provide education of a lesser quality to less people in opposition world, meaning that people in the Black community do not grow up to become politicians and again do not break the cycle of poverty, which is the entire purpose of the Black Panther Party. Okay, on to our second contention about keeping the program afloat and making our party thrive. So, judges, keeping these PFMCs open isn't easy when your donations are coming from a community which is probably, going through institutionalized oppression. This is an underprivileged community, so it's not as though donations will necessarily be incredibly in high number. We need to keep this program afloat to actually achieve our goals. That's the number one point in this round. the side that wins is the side which furthers the program in order to achieve the goals of our party. Now, Op may come up here and say that we would rather die strong and courageous and stay alive rather than maybe submitting to the state. However, the net benefits to the Black community, which is the main purpose of our party, are much greater when we can sustain a free healthcare program in an economically disadvantaged community. Think about how incredible that would actually be in a community which is being ravaged by economic inequality, racial inequality. If we're actually able to keep a free, fair, and most importantly, effective healthcare program, that is going to be incredible for the goals of our party. All in all, the material benefits of having PFMCs, the material benefits of having PFMCs that actually work outweighs any symbolic benefit that the op can tell you. Not only that, but there actually is a symbolic benefit to this money that we're accepting that makes our ideology thrive. The state is offering us money, and that shows that they've accepted our party can't be crushed. They've accepted that our party is a member of the status quo that they need to work with, whereas before in the past, they were trying to shut us down. The only way to reach a solution is to cooperate. And this cooperation brings a huge benefit to the Black community. It shows that the Black Panther Party cannot be taken down. At this point, options for negotiating and so much more is made possible. Taking the money is just an affirmation of the victory that we have already received. Now, on to our third contention about taking the money, actually opening a second front of fighting against the state from within the state itself. So the Black Panther Party in 1972 or after is fighting the state
Wait,
on
pause,
one
man.
front. Yeah,
Sorry, can I just get that this is contention two?
this is contention three.
Contention three. Oh yeah, no, I sorry, misspoke. What's the tagline?
Yeah, so the tagline is okay, I'll kind of shorten it. Like opening a second front to fight against the state from within the state.
Okay, cool. Sounds good.
Okay, is that good? All right. So I'm resuming my time now. So in 1972, we're fighting the state on external resistance, right? The state is winning that fight because it's basically going and trying to subvert our actions. The Black Panther Party cannot beat the police on the terrain, right? We're not going to beat that government institution. What the grant here that they're giving us offers is it opens a completely different front that the state can actually be affected through. So how does this mechanism work? So the police is trying to, or was at least trying to just destroy the PFMC through harassment and the health inspector raids. They're basically trying to shut us down. The government, the other side of the government is offering us funding through the War on Poverty grants, right? This is the administrative part of the government giving us a mandate to solve the solution between our two organizations. So there's a massive positive here in that if we can actually access meaningful change through this idea, we gain the ability to make meaningful change through the government. We are not going to make meaningful change through the government by trying to fight the police on their own front. We are not going to make meaningful change by trying to oppose the government. The Black Panther Party is never going to be elected. The Black Panther Party is never going to be able to enact meaningful legislation if it does not work with the government. We need to show that, number one, we have become a part of the status quo, and not only do we exist in it, we thrive in it, but we need to show that our existence in the status quo actually can bring meaningful change. And by accepting the grant and showing that we are willing to work with the government, we open a front to fight inequality through the government itself. We open the ability to petition, I don't know, say presidential candidates. We gain legitimacy as a party. We show that we're actually able to provide free healthcare to Black communities and that we've actually been able to make a meaningful difference. This is something that simply does not happen in opposition's world, which would rather have us stick to like strict, dogged idealism without actually reaching any solution. They would rather have us disadvantage our own communities so that we continue some sort of ideological bottom line, which simply does not have much room to grow. Again, us as the Black Panther parties will never overtake the US federal government. That's not going to happen. We need to reach a solution wherein we can fundamentally work with it. Okay, thank you very much. That is my time.
Hi, everybody. Apparently the internet is not my friend today. So if I cut out, I guess you won't be able to hear me, but maybe like if I cut out, if you could put something in the chat, that'd be great. Because maybe that'll go through. Hopefully it won't be a problem. But just preparing for the worst here. Thanks, ambulance. I really appreciate you being very loud right now. Okay. Uh, Judges, are we ready?
Yep.
Opponents, you ready? Time begins now. My opponents get up and they think I'm about to get up here and give a speech about dying for your ideals, about how you should prioritize the abstract philosophy over the practical nitty-gritty of what it means to run an organization. But that is not at all the speech I'm about to give. The core problem with my opponents in this round is that they mess up and bungle the historical context of the Black Panther Party so badly that not only is it the case that taking this funding would compromise those ideas, and I will talk about that, but it would actually mean the death of these organizational systems all over the country at a practical level. Let's get into it. On the top of case, the first thing Gov tells you is that we want to have net benefits to Black Americans. And I think we need to be a little more specific than that in this round. That this round is specifically about this House as the Black Panther Party. And the Black Panther Party was not just an organization which was like looking for the just general well-being of Black Americans, though they did care about that, but rather when you actually like read the documents from the founders of like Bobby Seale, Huey Long, those are the most important people, is there what they're specifically about is trying to create separate sort of nooks in society where you can have like a sort of like secluded kind of like basically revolutionary socialist society within the larger society. They're not just about like net util for like Black Americans in general, but rather thinking about how is it that Black Americans can get out of this larger scale system that is oppressing them. And that's not the same thing. Now, that's my response on the framework. Now, one observation that's vital from side up on top of it. Yeah.
Sorry, could you just give us like one tagline for the framework?
Sure. Achieving the goals of the Black Panther Party is what I think the should be. Which includes some benefits to Black Americans, but it's more specific. Okay. Time resumes now. Okay. Now, observation from side op, then op case, then responses. The key observation from side op, and this is so important, like judges, if you get anything from the speech, like this is critical, is 1972 is when this motion is set. This is when the funding is offered. The president of the United States in 1972 is Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon is about as opposed to the Black Panther Party, any kind of like racial, like equality. I mean, there's worse presidents if you go back in history, but he's very opposed to it. I think if you look at his presidency, you can see his presidency is characterized by one of trying to maintain the lingering remnants. Desegregation happened 20 years ago, but trying to prevent any attempt at the actual practical desegregation. He was opposed to any kind of policy that would help desegregate schools in any kind of practical way. He was opposed to any kind of policy that would help desegregate housing in any kind of way. He literally started the war on drugs, a policy which was basically about arresting like predominantly Black Americans and throwing them in jail. So, why does that matter? First contention from side op in today's debate is about government sabotage. My opponents vastly underestimate how opposed to the Black Panther Party the federal government actually is. They absolutely hate the Black Panther Party. I think when we look at the history of the FBI, I think the most notable example is just 3 years ago, the FBI has killed Fred Hampton, who was like a prominent leader of the Black Panther Party. The FBI kills him in 1969. But it's even worse than that, because the FBI specifically viewed these like it's not just the military side of the Black Panthers, these particular the activism that they were doing on education and like medicine and food. The FBI viewed those as a political threat too, because all of those were attempts to basically try to get people to buy into the ethos and to the ideas of the Black Panther Party, which are fundamentally opposed to like the existence of the U.S. federal government at some core level. The FBI literally did police raids against these free healthcare programs. They started rumor campaigns that the breakfast served at these programs was actively bad and harmful for you to try to get people to stop going. They started licensing raids on the healthcare and also literally sponsored undercover agents, and this is really important. The FBI has a whole history of trying to get undercover agents to enter into the Black Panther Party to try to actively basically sabotage it or arrest people from the inside. Why does that matter to the round? Because one of two things is going to happen. Either the federal government is only offering this funding insofar as Nixon is president to try to get people to basically try to like figure out a way to like get people hired from the government or try to like when you facilitate funding, you necessarily give the government much more access because the government requires you to comply with regulations before you accept their funding. And so probably all of this is frankly a plot to either get undercover agents in, get more intel so you can arrest and take down the party from the inside. This is exactly what the FBI's tactics were at this time period to try to suppress civil rights movements. Secondly, though, even if that's not the case, the money itself will co-opt the movement as a whole. I think the best example of this is with a different also Black Power revolutionary movement, which was the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee with the SNCC, which also got a bunch of federal funding. They went the opposite direction. Black Panther Party generally didn't take the money, but the SNCC did take the money. This was from LBJ. And what we see happen is that people from the SNCC end up getting hired by the government, that the party itself and the ideas it's founded on, they're a little different, but similar ideas of kind of like Marxist power, totally fall apart to their core. The whole party itself gets compromised when the government is hiring people from within it, when the ideas of the party are about trying to create separate kind of black enclaves apart from the US federal government. Okay, second contention from side up is on financial support and just general resources here, but you can call it like support as your tagline. Okay, where do your resources come from as the Black Panther Party? I think there's two key resources the party has, money and people, and they need both to be able to survive. Firstly, the people in your party come from community volunteers. These aren't necessarily people with any kind of money, but you need people to show up to actually facilitate the clinics. It doesn't matter how much money you have if there's nobody who's willing to do the actual parts of the party. But secondly, is you need wealthy left-wing donors. The Black Panther Party was not broke during this period. They actually have wealthy left-wing donors who are giving them money. No, they're not massively wealthy. Yes, there are limitations to what they can do, but the round is comparative. The question of the round is not, do you have any money on either side, but rather which side has more money? Now, both groups get angry the moment you take this money from the government. The people who are actively volunteering for the Black Panther Party are people who believe in their ideals. The moment you compromise them by working for the government, they go, wait a second, I was interested in like revolutionary black socialism, not like working for Richard Nixon. I'm out of this. I'm done. And the people who are your wealthy left-wing donors are going to be mad that you're accepting funding from a Republican president. What does this mean? It means that you lose people. It means that you have net less money because this is just really like there's going to be many more wealthy left-wing donors. The government doesn't care that much. They're not going to give you that much money. And thirdly, that your revenue stream is more unstable because even if the government's giving you money now, they can always change their mind later. Whereas these wealthy left-wing donors are actually bought into the ideology. They're in it for the long run. Okay, moving on to responding to government case. The government first contention is the purpose of the clinic. Firstly, everything I tell you about how the clinic will have less money, less support, or the government actively sabotage them is a fundamental prerequisite to the purpose of the clinic. You have less money on a government side, or the government literally arrests everybody from the inside with FBI raids. This in and of itself compromises everything they tell you. Every time they tell you about what these programs are doing for Black Americans, that's never going to actually flow through in the round because these programs get shut down because this is a government plan to co-opt the movement, destroy it from the inside, and even if it isn't, you're still losing money from doing this. Second contention here on side gov is on helping the party stay open. Once again, all the practical stuff I read you is a prerequisite to their case here. But secondly, on this idea that they say the state accepting money can't be crushed. But I think it's really important to note that this does not represent the state just sort of conceding authority to the Black Panther Party. The Black Panther Party, even at its height, is never absolutely massive. The state is not trembling in fear of them. The Black Panther Party has some amount of power and influence, but this is the state trying to kill you. They're not like, oh my God, you have 3,000 members. We're just going to give up. They're not trying to do that. The goal of this is for a president who has a history of racist action and trying to prevent racial equality doing the exact same thing in this instance. The third contention here they read about the second front. Once again, everything I tell you about the practical here is a prerequisite to this. But I think secondly is that even if they achieve their goals here, even if they're right that you'll actually get more funding, you still don't actually obey what the Black Panthers Party's goals are, which is what the round is about. The round is not about generically what's good for Black Americans, but can the Black Panther Party get closer to its Marxist Black enclaves? Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm Amar. I'm the second speaker on the government side, and I'm just getting my timer set up here before I start talking. Um, okay. And my time starts now. So, judges, a lot has happened in this round. So, I want to get it over. I want to talk about some key clashes. I want to do a little bit of an overview and, of course, discuss top of case before I get into the nitty-gritty and, talk about specific contention by contention rebutting. So, the first thing that I noticed in our opposition's first speech is that opposition tells us that the BPP is or that the BPP has fundamentally different goals than benefits to Black Americans. They say that yes, the BPP does care about Black Americans, but they also care about upholding the values of their own party, and they go on to talk about like Marxism and other things like that. I think that there's a lot of overlap here because the opposition does concede that yes, they do care about benefits to Black Americans. So on the framework clash about achieving the goals of the Black Panther Party and not just benefits to Black Americans, I think that since this concession did happen, and also that the Black Panther Party is considering the benefits to Black Americans, I think both frameworks can be addressed or can be discussed in the same way in this round. So, yeah, I think they're pretty similar frameworks. Opposition also talks about Nixon and government sabotage, right? And I'm going to talk about this a lot more because government sabotage is a huge thing in opposition's speech. So, I will talk about it now and I will talk about it later. But one thing I want to say is that it doesn't reflect the ongoing or whatever Op is saying in this point doesn't reflect the ongoing injustices in the status quo without any help whatsoever. I think something that's a key, like a really, really key thing that all judges should have on their flow is that opposition says that there are current ongoing injustices like FBI raids and, undercover infiltrations and things like that. But opposition doesn't say that these are still happening in both worlds. And everything they say about government sabotage has some degree of non-uniqueness to it because FBI raids will happen with or without the state's money. And I think opposition kind of concedes that by saying it's already happening in the status quo before taking any money whatsoever. So this is one of the main observations I noticed from this speech, which all judges should have on this flow, on their flow. So moving on into like main case rebuttals, right? I want to talk about contention one and contention two, and then I'll, move on to defending and then kind of crystallizing the round. So the first thing I want to talk about is, contention one on government sabotage. I think this is a continuation of what I just said, but undercover agents exist in both worlds, and the party is already compromised by the government's intentions and actions in both worlds. We agree that yes, the government isn't our friend here, but we don't agree that it's only going to happen in our world. We think that the off world has just as much cruelty and FBI raids and things like that in their world as well. There's no causality that the opposition explains here. Why does taking money lead to like more, I don't know, undercover FBI raids? Taking money isn't the same thing as letting more agents come into like our party. Either way, it's happening. So that's what I wanted to say about contention one. Moving on, contention two, Op says that, people wouldn't come to the clinic to volunteer because they're going to view it as like you're selling out the party, you're taking money, and you're being the government's friend here. And this is where I noticed a major contradiction, right? Opposition says that people will leave to work for the government and we will become a part of the government in their contention one, right? They kind of say that, but in contention one, they argue that people will get upset with the government's inclusion and they will leave. So the two ideas fundamentally contradict their people here, right? If you say that people will leave to work for the government but then will become a part of the government, I mean, I don't understand how this makes sense here, or I don't know. But moving on, I think I want to defend one of their rebuttals to our case. The opposition said that programs do get shut down because it's a government plan to shut it down from the inside. And we don't think that opposition is able to warn out that the government's plan here is to give us money and then shut down our organization from the inside with money. This plan was, first of all, a part of the war on poverty. Anything beyond that is pure speculation, not defended by any warranting from the opposition. Furthermore, the link about how the funding leads to us being infiltrated as the party cannot flow through. The opposition's link here is that we will have to agree to regulations if we take money. However, how is this similar to like them infiltrating our organization? This vague idea about regulations is in no way enough to justify the idea of sabotage. And if so, if there are regulations, what kind of regulations would they be? How would they impact our party and how would they make Black Americans' lives worse? There wasn't enough, like, this was pretty vague and it's a pretty ambiguous point in the round. So I hope that this can be, I don't know, clarified later. And the state doesn't, and opposition also said that the state doesn't concede authority if they give us money and they have like nefarious intentions in mind and the goal is to like I don't know exterminate the party or something, but it does concede authority, right? This is kind of answered in our own case by showing that the state is willing to work with the party. It does concede authority. it only doesn't concede authority if you buy what the opposition said about like infiltrating the party with money, which again is very ambiguous and there's no real warranting onto how this money is going to infiltrate our party. And we also said that undercover agents are going to try and like, I don't know, infiltrate our party either way. It takes a position that is not purely oppositional to the Black Panther Party. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say about that. And they
Yes.
sorry, yeah.
Sorry, can I just ask where that response is on the flow?
On the flow, this is a response to your rebuttals to our contention one.
Okay.
Okay.
And wait, sorry. The response is
The response is that we're not conceding authority. Or
okay.
sorry, yeah, no, sorry. The response is that it takes a position that is not purely oppositional to the Black Panther Party. This is one
Okay.
of the main responses here.
Okay.
Okay, okay, resuming my time here. Yeah, this undeniably promotes our major goal of furthering the happiness and assistance of the Black community when we take this money, right? And that kind of leads into our contention two here, right? So in our contention two, which wasn't like thoroughly responded to. I guess it was responded to in some kind of key like overview. But I think judges keeping these PFMCs open isn't easy, right? They say that Sam says that we need to keep our donations like left wing. We need to keep it from people. We need to get these donations from people that actually believe in the party. But we say that our community is going through institutionalized oppression here, right? That's probably one of the biggest points in this round, that the entire Black community at this point in time needs money and is going through institutionalized oppression. It is not easy to find elites that are going to give us money and are also left wing in the current society that we live in. And we need to keep this program afloat to actually achieve our goals. So to iterate our contention too here, we need to stay strong. We need to stay alive. And if that means that we need to take money from the state, that material benefit does outweigh everything that opposition says here, right? Their contention too about financial support, right? They keep like the opposition keeps saying that the wealthy left-wing donors will get mad that we're accepting funding from the state. But where are these wealthy left-wing donors? We don't really see them in history. I mean, yes, maybe there is like one or two. Of course, there's exceptions to everything. But the major rule here is that most donations are coming from people that are like quite average and want to help out the party. There's not like an army of elites that are helping the Black Panther Party right now. So that's like one of the major things to be discussed in this round. Okay, with the time that I have left, I want to talk about crystallizing the round, weighing, and looking at what each world looks like, right? One of the things that opposition said is that government sabotage is going to be worse in our world. They said that financial support is going to be harder in our world. And these are two, like both of these contentions are clashes because we also say how this would actually be better in our world. So I'm going to discuss why both of the contentions on the opposition side are actually turns for the government side in this debate. And that's because, first of all, there's a lot of non-uniqueness from both contentions. Financial support is still hard in both worlds. And at least we're alleviating financial support by taking money from the government, which, by the way, is not an infiltration to our party because there's going to be non-uniqueness and there's going to be undercover agents infiltrating either way, right? So the financial support is the only clear benefit you can actually see which only exists on the government side in this debate. So with that, I only have like 5 seconds left. So with that, I thank you so much for judging us today, and please vote for the government side in this debate.
Awesome. Now let's do this. Okay. Everyone ready?
Yes.
Time begins now. I want to begin on the top of case because the MG just absolutely bungles the framework analysis that I read in the LOC. What does it mean? I tell you in my opening speech that what we should be looking at in this round is what the goals of the Black Panther Party are. And the goals of the Black Panther Party, they care about the well-being of Black Americans, but the way they want to get there is specifically through a vision of Black socialism where they can create sort of like enclaves within the United States. It's not that they care about any version of Black well-being anywhere. They think the only way of getting that is through this specific policy of creating Black enclaves. What does that mean in the context of the round? When the MG comes up here and goes, look, there's lots of overlap because they both care about the same thing in the end, they don't. Because to achieve the goals of the Black Panther Party, you can't just like win over just like lots of Black Americans. You have to actually achieve the goals of the party. That is really, 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 really important. In fact, we see historically that the Black Panther Party was willing to compromise the well-being of Black Americans in the short run in the hopes of gaining something towards this like long run, like Black socialist like enclaves that I keep talking about. We see that in their like actual military stances, in the fact that they're constantly willing to like contest the government. We see that all the time, that the policies of the Black Panther Party are not just like, how do we optimize utilitarian calculus for Black Americans right now, but how do we create a certain kind of political and social revolution that can lead to a long run separation from these systems of oppression. That's key to the round. Now, first for opposition case, I'm going to go op case then gov case, is on government sabotage. I think the core of this is that my opponents, I think, just underrate the willingness of the FBI to do like significant hand-handed schemes to try to arrest people. Because what the government side tells you is that the FBI raids, like the FBI is just realistically not going to be doing this. That like you're going to have FBI raids and you're going to have undercover agents no matter what. But like realistically, the government's not giving you money so they can infiltrate your organization to then arrest everybody from the inside. And I just think that this is just like vastly underestimating the like guile and gumption and maybe evilness of the FBI. Like the FBI has a history of doing stuff like this. From the fact that it is much easier to have undercover agents when literally the government is giving you money. And as everybody in the round agrees, some number of people from the Black Panther Party, after accepting this money, are going to go work for the government. My opponents tell you this. I tell you this. We all agree that that's going to happen for some number of people. That historically, we see that people end up becoming government employees. That means you have a lot more surveillance when you have people in the government going to check on these institutions that are getting money, when people from these institutions are then working with the government has way more ability to surveil you. And we also see historically the FBI is willing to, this is not the exact same area, but like the FBI has been willing to, for example, seed cocaine in like low income, disproportionately Black communities in like the Bay Area historically. That the FBI is an institution that is willing to do these long run schemes in the interest of trying to bring down civil rights organizations. So we think, yes, there's a very high risk of government sabotage on the side op. But it's even worse for that for my opponents, because judges, if you're at this point skeptical of the idea of government sabotage, I'm not sure there's something other than the history I can use to convince you with that the government really did do this and did these kinds of schemes. But like, I agree with side gov at some level that there's no 100% guarantee that this is what Nixon's thinking. We say on op, he's really racist. The FBI has a history of doing this. I think that's a very reasonable supposition that the government isn't just doing this out of like the kindness of their hearts. But I can't say 100% that it was all just a plot. What I can say 100% though, is that it doesn't matter because you're actually just destroying the organization the moment you do this because of the MG's mishandling of my second contention on support. What does this contention say? This contention says first, you lose people because people get mad at you, and then secondly, you lose money because your donors specifically get mad at you. What are the responses in the second government speech? The first thing they tell you is they think they have this knockdown card where they're like, aha, you say that some people will work for the government and then some people will leave the organization. It's a contradiction. You can't work for the government and leave the organization. Obviously. The point is, some people will go work for the government and some people will go and leave the organization. Obviously, not literally 100% of the organization is going to go like pack their bags and dip, but most of them are, considering most of them are pretty radical. Most of them care about socialism. The few who remain join the government. And so you have an understaffed movement of people who compromise their ideals of their movement and joined the government. There's no contradiction here. The second government speech just can't really have an underlying response to this because it's just true. Don't let them make a new response in the PMR. That's key to the round because of analysis I read you in the first op speech that goes entirely underresponded to, that having people in your movement is a prerequisite to everything else because it doesn't matter how much money you have if you're just like one guy and don't have a movement. If you want to actually have a Black socialist movement, or even if you don't care about that and just want Black well-being, you need people to actually run the healthcare. You need people to actually serve the food. Again, unresponded to, don't let them make a new response in the PMR. Then my opponents just ignore, well, my opponents on case drop this analysis about wealthy left-wing donors. They then redo something later on about how these donors don't exist. I'm going to respond to it here because I think here's where it makes the most sense. My opponents tell you that there's no donors, that these wealthy left-wing donors don't exist. I made them up. They're like my imaginary friends. But no, just before Richard Nixon was president was Lyndon Johnson, who had problems, but very, very, very pro-civil rights consistently over the course of his presidency. He passed the Civil Rights Act. He did a lot for civil rights. He is the face of the Democratic Party right now. He is going to be doing a lot of stuff. The people who are funding him are also the same people funding the Black Panther Party. There are these wealthy left-wing donors who exist, but they're going to be furious when you go and start accepting money from Richard Nixon, who is like their sworn enemy to their grave. Importantly, this means you have less money. And also, another piece of analysis that goes conceded is that your revenue stream is more unstable due to political change. That even if my opponents are right that this gets you the most money right now, the next president who comes in may just get rid of all your money and then your movement immediately just dies. That once again goes unresponded to. Don't let them make a new response in the PMR. Now, moving to Gov case here. I spent most time op because there's a lot of like sort of everything in the debate's pretty messy and with a lot of clash. First contention on side Gov is on the purpose of the clinic. And my opponents say we're not going to concede authority here, that like we're not compromising the end goal of the Black Panther. I think that fundamentally you just are conceding the goal of the Black Panther Party insofar as these clinics exist to try to foster like the institutions of a separate government, not just like trying to cure people's diseases. Part of the reason they care about education is not for its own sake, but to try to create a certain kind of like separate society within the broader United States. I think the moment if you buy that, judges, you have to immediately drop all of Gov's side because literally nothing they tell you actually links into the specifics of my framework. That's a very clean ballot for side op. But secondly, once again, if you have less money, if you have less people, you can't run the clinic. It doesn't matter what the purpose of it is. Then the second contention on helping the party stay open, they say that the Black community needs money and that these donors don't exist. But once again, you can find these elites. They do exist. They're already giving money to you. The last president was very pro-civil rights. It's not like there aren't wealthy left-wing people who are willing to donate money. Those do exist. The Black Panther Party is getting a lot of money, and that the government is doesn't care that much. They're not giving you that much money. That goes unresponded to. And two, there's always going to be this like long-term instability. Thus, I urge an opposition ballot. Thank you. I always forget, is it a minute that I get between these two speeches or 90 seconds?
I think it's 90 seconds.
Cool, sounds good. I think that's 90 seconds. I'm going to assume anyone isn't ready to speak up, but I figure everyone probably got ready in that 90 seconds. Awesome. My time begins now. There's an old saying, if you find yourself in a hole before you do anything else, stop digging. And the point of this sort of old axiom is that before you figure out exactly how fast you're going or the strength of your shovel, or if you should try to upgrade your shovel to a jackhammer or a drill or whatever, you first need to ask, what direction are you going? Are you going in the right direction? Are you going anywhere at all? Now, what does this mean about the round? The cleanest way to vote, honestly, for op in this round is on the framework here, which is that the government side throughout the round just absolutely mishandles the framework and says we should just be talking about the net benefits of just Black people everywhere. When time and time again, from the very beginning of my opening speech, I explain that the Black Panther Party, who this House is, who the goal of this round is to fulfill the desires of, is not just a movement about just the general well-being of Black people everywhere, but a movement that's willing to compromise that well-being sometimes for the sake of trying to create a specific kind of political and social revolution. If you buy that, judges, nothing else of what my opponents tells you flows through. Because my opponents are fully willing to admit throughout the round that you're going to go work for the government, that you're going to be sort of like compromising these kind of violent ideals and these sort of like ideals of separatism. They say this from the first Gov speech. They say this before I even say anything in the round. And if you buy that, then it's exactly how I opened this speech. That even if they're right that you have all this efficiency and you're doing all these things, you're just going in the wrong direction. They're upgrading their shovel to a power drill and just digging this hole deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. That's a really clean place to vote. But even if you don't buy that, there are two other really clean places to vote op in this round. The first way is on my first contention, on government sabotage. Because if government sabotage is true, what my opponents tell you about this government money being put to good use is just fundamentally false. If Nixon, a president with a history of racist plots against Black Americans, is using the FBI, an organization with a history of racist and kind of crazy plots against Black Americans, and using this money to sort of ingratiate themselves, get reconnaissance, try to arrest everybody, then the round is over for Gov on the spot. And they know that. That's the reason why their response here is like, the government wouldn't do that. That's ridiculous. Because the truth is, if the government does that, the government side in this round is just absolutely cooked. I don't know how to, like I've said, I've presented you the evidence on this, judges. I've presented you the history. I think it's compelling. I think even if you believe there's a significant chance of government sabotage, insofar as the movement isn't doing badly in the status quo, you shouldn't risk destroying the whole movement by letting your enemies into the fray. But if you don't buy this, you don't buy this. And frankly, you don't need to vote op. Because the final place to vote op is the place that literally just means that my opponents have no offense left in the round. There's no actual case there. Because every time my opponent's end impacts all rely on the actual organization being more successful or having more money. Look at each of their contentions. Each of their contentions are kind of the same thing. Each of their contentions are saying, look, the Black community is suffering. This organization gives us the ability to give them more money and more resources. So you should vote for us because we'll do that. But if you don't have more money, if you don't have more resources, then their entire case falls apart. Here's the trick. Look to my second contention that goes deeply unresponded to. My analysis about money and the existence of donors, the only response is just ignoring the existence of wide-scale political support for these kinds of civil rights movements. The second response I read to you is the second response they read is that there's a contradiction, that people can't be in two places at once. But once again, it's that some people go to the government and then most of them leave, and who remains goes to the government. From the very first speech, I read you prerequisite analysis that you need to have people to be able to use your funds, and that you need to have people who are actually willing to volunteer at your movement to distribute any of the kinds of goods you want. If all you care about in this round is Black well-being, then don't piss off the donors you already have. Then don't piss off the people you already have. Once again, my opponents drop my analysis that the government is just not going to give you that much money, and they drop the analysis that the government funding can get cut off at a moment's notice. Keep the people you have, keep the funding you have, vote up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So I have 5 minutes and 30 seconds on the clock just to pretty much go over what's going to happen. Hang on, let me set my timer. I'm going to go over the responses that my opponent has made to our case. of which there are many. And then I am going to go on to some crystallization and explain to you exactly why you are voting for government. So my time is going to start now. Is anybody not ready? Now you can speak up. Um, okay, great. So my time is going to start in 3, 2, 1 now. So let's go over the response to the rebuttals on our case. So on the top of case, this is a massive point on the round. Our opponents concede that a massive goal of the Black Panther Party is achieving the benefits to Black Americans. So even though there likely is some emphasis on the enclaves of Black socialism, by far the greatest goal is to provide immediate assistance to Black communities. Furthermore, this idea that Sam tries to talk about, the political mechanisms by which we reach net benefits to Black communities, this can't necessarily 100% be based on this idea that of what Sam is telling you, because the motivations behind parties such as the Black Panther Party can in many cases be vague and contradictory with themselves, right? These are not at all confirmed. Who knows what the motivations of the Black Panther Party are in a decade versus a decade after, right? Especially when it comes to
Pause time.
politics. Yeah.
I think this analysis that like the Black Panther Party's ideals will change or that they're internally contradictory or vague is new. And I've been reading this since the top of the LSE.
Okay, I think we mentioned something about the vague nature of that idea before, but it is judge's discretion. Okay, so even if you buy that POO, the most guaranteed thing here on the framework that we can all agree on is that the Black Panther Party fundamentally, first and foremost, cares about the needs and goals of Black Americans. This is not something that Sam can tell you is not the main point in the round. That is the greatest weighing idea on the framework here, and our contentions work under that idea. Okay. We know for a fact that the Black Panther Party mainly cares about that. Now let's get on to the contention one rebuttals. So on the contradiction, this contradiction still does exist because Sam was basically arguing that there would be a mass amount of people who would join the government. This was objectively his first point. You could check his initial flow. He tries to flip this later on by saying some people would do X and some would do Y, but he initially claimed that both would do things. Both would do things at equal value. Furthermore, he then argues that this idea about a mass amount of people also joining the government. So since these two ideas are diametrically opposed, he objectively did make this contradiction. He made the argument that two massive bulks of the movement would act in two diametrically opposed ways, which makes absolutely no sense. Now, I will get onto this point about destroying our organization in the weighing, but having an organization which is not actively being shut down by the government, as well as having a party which can actually provide the services it puts out, such as the PFMC, is the biggest prerequisite of the entire round. As mentioned before, all of Sam's arguments on why the Panther Party will shut down on our side are mainly non-unique because there will always be this idea of government subversion. Again, and also the idea about people leaving the party is simply not founded due to the massive contradictions made in it. It also doesn't work because Sam never really provided you a link between the regulations that we have to accept and the subversion and the people leaving. That logic chain was simply not there, and therefore that point cannot win him the round. Sam does not consider the fact that having a more successful organization, as per all of our as per all of our contentions, is the main thing which will promote our party, further the goals of our party, and bring in new members. Okay, which will cancel out the members which could potentially leave. Now let's get on to the weighing. So let's look at the clashes here. The first clash is which side promotes the goals of the movement. I have already told you that the most assured part of the framework is that we care about assisting Black communities. This is something we can say to a certainty. For this reason, we need to look at which side serves the purposes of the clinic, as well as the purpose of the Panthers. This is objectively our C1 and our C2. The fact that us as an organization can prove that we bring results to our Black Americans, that's C1 and C2, and that we can provide meaningful change through an established authority of the government in C3, which is a point which is not at all interacted with by Sam, is what wins us the round. The magnitude here is that having an organization that is not being continuously attacked by the government and that can back its words up is a prerequisite to having a successful movement. These are prerequisites to receiving, say, Sam C2 about financial support. Furthermore, a massive majority of their critiques about subversion, for example, as well as for people leaving, are simply non-unique. For this reason, our points in our C1 and C2 are a prerequisite to his C2, and the biggest magnitude points, and they are the biggest magnitude points in the round, they win us the round. The key prerequisite here is a massive idea. Furthermore, our C3 about how we're working to change the government from the inside is not really interacted with by Sam. That is also another clear government ballot. Now, with my time left, I want to get into some world-by-world comparison. So the ops world is heading you into a downward spiral that the state has already set into motion. We all agree that both worlds have FBI raids and government sabotage, but saying that money wouldn't help us get out of this spiral just is objectively not true. A truth we have already told you is that the party's finances are an issue, and the current amount of donations that they are getting is one of the reasons that a debate like this even exists. As Op attacks our side a lot, Op attacks our side to a high degree, but their world does not appear to be heading in the correct direction. Sam does not give you an objective reason why they win. The government world cannot remove all government sabotage, but we can keep the party alive. Our entire case is built around the fact that the government has sabotaged us to a point where we can't get much done without some intervention and government issue involved. With this money, we open windows to the kinds of negotiations and support that our party needs to continue helping Black Americans, which is the main voting point in this round. This is the main thing which everyone can agree is what the party is mainly for, not this vague idea of socialism that Sam's brings up, but this idea of helping Black Americans is the most assured point in this round. And if you believe that, you have to vote the government side. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. That was a really fun round.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Great round.